Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Jedediah, and this is Jedediah's Corner. I want to read out really quickly the definition of the word terrorism as it is defined in the Webster's Dictionary. The unlawful use or threat of violence, especially against the state or the public, as a politically motivated means of attack or coercion. Let me just do that one more time. The unlawful use or threat of violence, especially against the state or the public, as a politically motivated means of attack or coercion. There's nowhere in that definition that says you have to be wearing a keffiyeh. There's nowhere in that definition where it says that you have to have brown skin. There's nowhere in that definition where it says that you have to believe that Muhammad is the prophet of Allah. The unlawful use or threat of violence. So unlawful. What laws are we going by? How about we go by the highest laws there are, the world courts, which ironically were established after the Jewish Holocaust, when Germany and their Nazi party tried to exterminate the Jews. It's very interesting that they're doing the exact same thing now. Plenty of people have made that comparison. So they are not attacking a state, because Palestinians actually don't have a state, but they are attacking the public. They are still civilians. And it is a politically motivated means of attack, obviously, and coercion. We could go through the definitions and the meanings of different war crimes, and we can fit them all into place here. So how did terrorism get conflated with Islam? And how come when a state or an organization commits violent acts against people that are not deemed to be worthy, it's not called terrorism? So what does this definition mean? It's essentially been rendered useless, or not useless. It's been made into a tool to bludgeon certain groups while protecting others who issue out the same type of violence that they condemn, often in greater measures. Killing 1,000 people with a bomb doesn't make it any better than going into 1,000 homes and stabbing one person while they sleep at night. There's no difference. The only difference is the person who pushes that button to blow all of those people up doesn't have to deal with the psychic repercussions and doesn't have to deal with their conscience. Maybe a little bit, but not so much. They don't have to literally see each individual person die. It's like a video game to them. They press a button, boom, fun. The only problem is on the other side of that transaction, innocent people are killed. Families are ruined. Lives are ruined. The amount of destruction is hard to process. So just take it bit by bit. Put yourself in their shoes. Imagine if you were born in Gaza. Imagine you went to school and got a doctorate degree. The population of Gaza is very highly educated. This is a fact that's not often spoken about. They're not barbarians. They're not these filthy animals, like Israel likes to call them. They're actually a highly educated population, and unfortunately there's very little opportunity for them there. So they have a high unemployment rate, because if you're subjected to periodic bombings and destruction of your infrastructure, if you're brutalized and treated terribly every single day, I don't want to take anything away from the Palestinians, because they are suffering more than I could ever even potentially imagine. But one thing that helps me with my empathy or sympathy for them, both, is that I spent time in prison. Altogether, I spent about 4 years in correctional institutions. That's what they call them in the United States. They're not correctional institutions. And I made this comment before, that there's a quite stark comparison between the U.S. prison system and the way that they operate and the way that Israel treats Palestinians. They took a lot of lessons from us. They collaborated, I am sure. And it is a cynical and nihilistic endeavor. You are taking human beings, and it's even worse there. It's not as bad. I mean, here, at least I got a trial. At least I knew what I was being charged with. And for long periods of time, I had to sit and wait, not knowing what my fate was going to be. And that's really one of the worst parts of prison. Beyond the starvation, because they do try and starve you in U.S. jails. I can't imagine what they do in Palestinian jails. Imagine if they treat the civilian population and put them on a diet and calculate how many calories they should each eat. Imagine how they treat their prisoners. I mean, we have reports already. We know what they do. We know what they do in those jails. We know what the Hilltop Youth did on, October 12th? They went into a village and they took a bunch of civilians, and there are pictures of this. Stripped them naked, put out cigarettes on their bodies, urinated on them, inserted things into their rectums. This is what Israel did to Palestinian civilians. And then they want to claim all of these atrocities on the other side without any evidence, or with scanty evidence, with debunked evidence. They claimed the woman was raped, and her family was incredibly upset with the New York Times. They're incredibly upset with Jeffrey Gettleman. They called him out for being a liar and manipulating them for him to get a story. Obviously, he's controlled. Obviously, he's doing this as propaganda. I don't know how he won his Pulitzer Prize, but he sure as hell ain't going to win one now. Even the New York Times rebelled against him, which is shocking, because the New York Times typically walks hand in hand with Israel. So these crimes are rising to the level where people who have historically defended them are even starting to back away. It's too horrific. It's too disgusting. You can't just kill that many people with impunity and expect to get away with it. They won't. They won't get away with it. There are many court cases happening. They'll keep happening. We're setting legal precedents. This destruction that they think is going to help them not have to deal with the Gaza problem anymore, because they just kill everybody and displace everyone, it's not going to work. It is making them, or you, if you're in Israel and you're a Zionist, it's making you into a worldwide pariah. Welcome to the club. I was in the U.S. when we invaded Iraq. I was here when the 9/11 attacks happened. I was very close to New York City. I feel for the people who lost their lives, but there's a lot of questions about that. And then beyond that, the questions about it, Israel applauded it. They were very happy about 9/11. And they set out to make anti-terrorism essentially anti-Islam. They tied terrorism to Islam and to people with dark skin, people wearing masks and keffiyehs. And unfairly, they don't prosecute the terrorists in their own government, in their own country. I've said this a million times, I'll say it again. There's like 3 or 4 people in the Knesset who were on terrorism lists up until 2022. Ben-Gvir being one of the chief, horrible, disgusting terrorists. He's in control of security in the country. He's in control of the fucking prison guards. And this guy, he was, as a teenager, he ripped this, like a Cadillac emblem off the Prime Minister of Israel's car right before the Prime Minister was assassinated. And then he was put on a terrorism list. He follows a guy who was also a terrorist who wanted to bomb an embassy. It's just disgusting. These people have histories. They have long trails of bodies and blood behind them. And they want to whitewash all that now because we don't have memory and we don't look back. But we have to. We have to start looking back. We have to learn from history. If you don't learn from history, you are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. That is true. History doesn't repeat, but it echoes, or it rhymes. These are cliches, but they're true. So, I'll finish it off. The definition of terrorism. And nowhere in there does it talk about brown skin or Islam. The unlawful use or threat of violence, especially against the state or the public, as a politically motivated means of attack or coercion. This makes the State of Israel a terrorist organization. I'll repeat that. This makes the State of Israel a terrorist organization by definition.